The breaking point. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Concord for just over 2 decades. We were newcomers, still wide-eyed at the grandeur of interstellar civilization, still learning the complex dance of diplomacy among species whose evolutionary paths had birthed minds so different from our own. We were considered emotional, unpredictable, but ultimately harmless. Primitive, even. Our technology was generations behind the great powers. Our military consisted of a handful of converted cargo vessels, armed with rudimentary weapons. We were tolerated, sometimes patronized, but never feared. That was their mistake. Research Outpost Helios orbited the gas giant Kepler-16, its solar arrays gleaming like dragonfly wings against the planet's swirling amber clouds. The outpost was a joint venture. 27 humans working alongside representatives from 6 alien species, studying atmospheric composition and testing terraforming techniques. Among them was senior botanist Ilara Chen and her 9-year-old daughter, Lena. Lena Chen had been born in space, had never known Earth except through her mother's stories and holographic projections of forests and oceans she'd never touched. She had her mother's quick smile and curious mind, but her eyes were her father's, startlingly violet, a rare genetic quirk. She knew the scientific name of every plant in the hydroponics bay. She could recite the atmospheric composition of 14 different planets. She kept a collection of small trinkets gifted to her by the alien scientists, crystalline formations and strange mechanical puzzles that she would solve while humming tunes of her own invention. On the day that would change everything, Lena was helping her mother catalog samples from the experimental atmospheric garden. She wore her favorite jumper, tiny golden stars embroidered across blue fabric, her dark hair tied back with a ribbon she'd made herself from spare optical fiber that caught the light and scattered it like diamond dust. "Mom, look. The Centaurian moss has turned purple." Lena pointed excitedly at a sample container where what had been emerald green vegetation now displayed vibrant violet fronds. She carefully noted the change in her datapad, her small fingers tapping efficiently at the screen. Ilara smiled, about to respond, when the outpost's communication system chimed. "Incoming vessel requesting docking clearance," announced the AI. "Identification registers as Vexari Scientific Consortium." Ilara frowned. The Vexari weren't part of the research agreement. They rarely ventured outside their own territory, a cluster of systems at the edge of the Sagittarius Arm. What little was known about them painted them as coldly logical, their society structured around a rigid hierarchy of intellectual achievement. They were bipedal, tall and gaunt with gray-blue skin and 3 pairs of jointed fingers. Their eyes, 4 of them, arranged in a diamond pattern, had no pupils, just a milky iridescence that seemed to shift with their thoughts. "Should we be worried?" Lena asked, picking up on her mother's tension. "No, sweetheart. Just surprised. The Vexari don't usually interact much." The Vexari delegation, 3 of them, moving with precise, measured steps, were escorted to the outpost's conference room. Standing at nearly 7 feet tall, they had to duck through the human-sized doorways. Their breathing apparatus hissed softly with each inhalation, filtering the outpost's atmosphere to their specific requirements. Dr. Ambrose Novak, the outpost director, greeted them courteously but cautiously. "We welcome representatives of the Vexari Consortium to Outpost Helios. I am Director Novak. How may we assist you?" The tallest Vexari tilted its head at an angle that humans would later learn indicated scientific interest rather than the confusion it resembled. "I am Chief Researcher Casfrey. We detected unusual atmospheric signatures from your experiments. We wish to observe." Something in its voice, a harmonic undertone beneath the words, set the humans on edge. But there was no diplomatic reason to refuse the request. The Concord encouraged scientific exchange. "Of course," Novak said. "Senior botanist Chen will provide you with our research protocols." Over the next 3 days, the Vexari observed the experiments, asked precise questions, and took copious notes. They seemed particularly interested in the effects of various atmospheric compositions on organic life. And they watched Lena. At first, it seemed mere curiosity about a juvenile human. None of the research outposts housed children. Lena was an exception, permitted because her mother was a senior researcher and her father had been killed in a shuttle accident 2 years earlier. The Vexeri studied how she moved, how she interacted with the adults, how she learned. They asked questions about her education, her physical development, her cognitive abilities. Ilara found it unsettling but not alarming. Xenobiologists from all species often exhibited similar curiosity about each other's young. Cultural exchange was part of the Concorde's mission. On the 4th day, Lena vanished. She had been helping in hydroponics, then said she was going to the observation deck, her favorite place on the station, where she could watch the gas giants swirling storms. Security footage showed her walking down corridor C7, then nothing. As if she had simply ceased to exist between one camera's field of view and the next. The outpost went into lockdown. Every compartment was searched. Emergency signals were sent to the nearest human military outpost, 6 days away at top speed. 18 hours into the search, the Vexeri ship decoupled from the station without authorization and accelerated away. When Novak demanded an explanation, there was only silence. The outpost's single defense drone was dispatched to intercept, but the Vexeri vessel destroyed it with contemptuous ease and vanished into FTL. 3 days later, a package arrived at the outpost via automated courier drone. Inside was a data crystal and a small, clear container holding a single ribbon, optical fiber that scattered light like diamond dust. The data crystal contained a detailed scientific report on human juvenile physiology, complete with high-resolution scans of internal organs, nervous system function, and brain activity under various stimuli. The final entry noted, subject expired at 72.3 hours. Data collection complete. Ilara's scream reverberated through the outpost corridors, a primal sound of grief that would soon be echoed across human space. For what the Vexeri could not understand, what they had no frame of reference to comprehend, was that they had not simply terminated an experimental subject. They had murdered a child, and humanity would not forgive. The news reached Earth 6 days later. The data crystal, the report, the ribbon, all were transmitted to the human delegation at the Concorde Council. The recording of Ilara's testimony, her face hollow with grief as she clutched her daughter's ribbon, was broadcast to every human settlement. The reaction was immediate and unprecedented. Partisan political divides evaporated overnight. Economic competitors pooled resources. Old enemies stood shoulder to shoulder. A species known for its fractiousness suddenly moved with singular purpose. The human ambassador to the Concorde, Lin Zhao, requested an emergency session to demand justice for Lena Chen. The council chamber was silent as the evidence was presented. The clinical report, the cold cataloging of a child's suffering. When the Vexeri representative finally spoke, its words sealed their species' fate. We acknowledge acquiring the juvenile specimen for scientific study. Your outrage is noted but irrelevant. The advancement of knowledge requires occasional sacrifice. We have shared our findings as a gesture of scientific cooperation. This matter is concluded. Ambassador Zhao's response was delivered in a voice so controlled it seemed carved from ice. You have taken a child from her mother. You have tortured her to death while documenting her pain. You have dismissed her life as a sacrifice for your curiosity. The Vexeri Consortium has committed an act of war against humanity. She stood, gathering her materials. This matter is not concluded. It has only begun. The other council representatives shifted uncomfortably. Many were sympathetic, but they had seen new species come and go before. Emotional outbursts, even justified ones, were expected. They would be followed by negotiation, perhaps reparations, eventually resolution. The humans would be angry, might even attempt some symbolic military action with their handful of outdated ships. But ultimately, what could they do? They did not understand that they were witnessing the calm before a storm of unprecedented magnitude. For 20 years, humanity had played the role of the eager student, the wide-eyed newcomer. We had shown the galaxy our art, our music, our philosophies. We had participated in scientific exchanges, established trade agreements, joined peacekeeping missions. We had not shown them our weapons. Deep beneath the lunar surface, in hardened bunkers that had never appeared on any diagram shared with non-human eyes, lay the true face of human military capability. Ships that made our public fleet look like children's toys. Weapons developed during centuries of humans fighting humans, refined to terrible efficiency, then hidden away when we reached for the stars in peace. We had hoped never to need them again. We had wanted to be better than our bloody history. But the Vexeri had taken Lina Chen, with her quick smile and curious mind and eyes like violet stars, and they had cut her open to satisfy their curiosity, while she screamed for a mother who could not save her. So we unleashed what we had kept hidden, what we had been ashamed to show the galaxy. Because there are lines that cannot be crossed, and the Vexeri had leaked across one without a second thought. Project Prometheus was activated 60 hours after Ambassador Zhao walked out of the council chamber. Military reservists were quietly called up. Automated manufacturing facilities that had been maintained in standby mode for 2 decades hummed to life, beginning production runs of equipment whose specifications were classified beyond top secret. Fleet Admiral Helena Ortiz, whose public role had been largely ceremonial, entered a specific code into a quantum lock terminal in her office. The confirmation came back instantly. Prometheus protocol as INITIAPE, awaiting command authorization. She placed her palm on the scanner, spoke her authorization phrase, and made the hardest decision of her career. Authorization confirmed. Mobilize the 7th Fleet. The 7th Fleet did not exist in any public record. Its ships had never docked at civilian ports. Its personnel were officially assigned to training facilities or administrative posts. It was about to become the most feared military force in the galaxy. As the fleet prepared to depart from its hidden lunar base, a secure transmission reached the flagship, the UES Retribution. It was from Ilara Chen. Admiral Ortiz accepted the call personally. On the screen, Ilara looked hollowed out by grief, but her eyes burned with an intensity that matched Ortiz's own determination. "I want to be there," Ilara said without preamble. "That's not possible, Dr. Chen. This will be a combat mission. My daughter died alone, surrounded by monsters who saw her as a specimen. I won't let her death be avenged by strangers." Her voice cracked but didn't break. "I've served on research outposts for 12 years. I know Vexari biology better than anyone in your fleet, and I have nothing left to lose." Admiral Ortiz studied the woman's face for a long moment. "Report to Luna Base in 24 hours. You'll be assigned as a civilian scientific consultant to the Retribution." As the call ended, Ortiz turned to her executive officer. "Make sure Dr. Chen is given access to anything she needs for her research. If anyone can help us understand how to hurt them most effectively, it's her." "Yes, Admiral." The officer hesitated. "The Council has sent 3 more messages demanding we stand down." Ortiz's expression hardened. They're about to learn that some lines should never be crossed. The 7th Fleet departed Earth orbit 24 hours later. 37 ships, each a masterpiece of military engineering, armed with weapons the galaxy had never seen. They moved in perfect formation toward their first target. Outpost Nexus 9, a Vexari research station near the border of human space. Humanity had been crossed, and now the galaxy would learn what that truly meant. Warathi of VDHEGNTUL. Outpost Nexus 9 hung in space like a jewel, a gleaming example of Vexari architecture, all clean lines and mathematical precision. Its laboratories were renowned across 3 sectors for their cutting-edge research into subspace field dynamics. 276 Vexari scientists and support personnel went about their work, unaware that they were about to become the first casualties in a war they didn't know had been declared. The UES Retribution dropped out of FTL 500,000 kilometers from the outpost, far enough to avoid immediate detection, close enough for what came next. On the bridge, Admiral Helena Ortiz stood with her hands clasped behind her back, her posture rigid, her expression unreadable. "Are we in range, Commander?" she asked. "Yes, Admiral. Targeting systems locked. And there's no chance they can detect us." "No, ma'am. Our stealth systems are generations beyond anything they've encountered." Ortiz nodded once. "Commence Operation First Light." There was no dramatic countdown, no impassioned speech. Just a series of quiet acknowledgments as commands were relayed through the ship's systems. Then, from the Retribution's bow, a beam of concentrated energy, invisible to the naked eye, but burning with the fury of a small star, lanced out across the void. It struck Nexus 9 with surgical precision, bypassing the outpost's shields as if they weren't there. For a fraction of a second, nothing seemed to happen. Then the outpost power systems overloaded simultaneously. Lights flickered and died. Life support failed. Communications went silent. 2 minutes later, the backup systems attempted to engage. They too were immediately overwhelmed by a second, precisely calibrated energy pulse. The Archon's head tilted in that familiar angle of scientific interest, the specimen acquired by our researchers. "This escalation is highly disproportionate. We offer cessation of all research on human subjects and full access to the data gathered as compensation." Ilara stepped forward. "My name is Dr. Ilara Chen. That specimen was my daughter. Her name was Lena. She was 9 years old. She loved plants and stars and making things with her hands. Her voice was steady, each word precise. She died terrified and in pain while your researchers took notes." "Regrettable," the Archon acknowledged, "but the advancement of knowledge." "Can you feel remorse?" Ilara interrupted. "Can you feel anything beyond academic interest in our response?" The Archon considered this. "Such emotional reactions are inefficient. We observe, we analyze, we advance. This is the Vexari way." Ilara turned to Ortiz. "They'll never understand. They'll never stop." Ortiz nodded slowly, then addressed the Archon again. "Your inability to comprehend the magnitude of your actions does not excuse them. The human fleet is prepared to eliminate your military capabilities and scientific facilities. However, we will allow civilian evacuation of targeted areas if you agree to immediate and unconditional surrender." The offer surprised everyone on the bridge, including Ilara. It hadn't been part of the plan. But something had shifted in the Admiral's thinking. The Archon's response was immediate and predictable. "The Vexari do not surrender. Our defenses are substantial. Your threats err." The transmission cut off as the Retribution's weapons officer, acting on Ortiz's silent command, destroyed the Vexari communications array with a precisely targeted shot. "All ships, commence Operation Final Light," Ortiz ordered. "Military installations and scientific facilities only. Avoid civilian centers where possible." Around the bridge, officers exchanged glances of surprise, but no one questioned the order. The battle for Vexar Prime lasted 6 hours. The Vexari defenses were indeed substantial: planetary shields, orbital weapon platforms, atmospheric fighters. But they had never faced an enemy like humanity, driven by the cold fury of a parent's grief. When it was over, the Vexari military had been decimated. Their scientific facilities, the pride of their civilization, lay in ruins. But their cities still stood, their population largely intact. On the Retribution's bridge, Admiral Ortiz opened another channel to the surface. A different Vexari appeared, this one clearly shaken by the day's events. "I am Sub-Archon Nevlar," it said. "Supreme Archon Viltaz perished in your attack. I am authorized to discuss terms." "There are no terms to discuss," Ortiz replied. "Only conditions you will accept. The Vexari Consortium will immediately cease all research involving sentient subjects. You will dismantle your military capabilities under human supervision. You will remain within your current territorial boundaries. Violation of these conditions will result in the complete destruction of your species. The subarchon's posture shifted in what might have been resignation. We accept these conditions. The alternative appears to be extinction. One more thing, Ilara said, stepping forward. You will build a memorial on every Vexari world. It will bear my daughter's name and image. It will tell the story of what was done to her and what happened as a result. Your children will learn her name and understand why they must never repeat the mistakes of their ancestors. The subarchon hesitated, then inclined its head. It will be done. 1 month later, Ilara Chen stood before the newly constructed memorial on Vexor Prime. A perfect holographic image of Lena smiled down from above, her violet eyes shining with the curiosity that had defined her short life. Around the base of the memorial, Vexari children, supervised by their caretakers, placed small tokens, crystalline formations, mechanical puzzles, objects that might have fascinated a human child with an interest in science. Ambassador Lin Zhao stood beside Ilara, watching the scene with a complex mixture of emotions. Was it worth it? Zhao asked quietly. Ilara touched the ribbon in her hair, optical fiber that scattered light like diamond dust, identical to the one Lena had worn. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe there could have been another way. Maybe we could have made them understand without so much destruction. They took a child, Zhao said simply. The galaxy needed to learn that some lines cannot be crossed. Ilara watched as a young Vexari approached the memorial, its movements hesitant, its 4 eyes fixed on Lena's image. It placed a small object at the base, a perfectly formed crystal sphere that captured light and transformed it into patterns of color. She would have loved that, Ilara whispered. Across the galaxy, the message spread with the speed of light. Humanity, the newcomers, the emotional species that had seemed so harmless, had revealed itself to be something else entirely. Not conquerors, not tyrants, but protectors with a capacity for retribution that defied comprehension. The Concord Council debated for months, ultimately deciding that while the human response had been extreme, the Vexari's actions had indeed violated the most fundamental principles of interspecies relations. No formal censure was issued against Earth. Behind closed doors, diplomats whispered that they were simply afraid to provoke humanity further. On Earth, the debate continued. Had we gone too far? Not far enough. Had we compromised our own values in the name of justice? There were no easy answers, no universal consensus. But one thing was certain. The galaxy now understood that humans would go to any length to protect their children. That beneath our art and music and philosophy lay a core of steel that would not bend when it came to defending our most vulnerable. Years later, when asked about the Vexari incident in an interview, Admiral Helena Ortiz, by then retired, offered a perspective that would be quoted in history books for generations. We came to the stars hoping to find wonder. We found it, and we shared our own. But we also brought with us something the galaxy needed to understand. There are lines that must never be crossed. The Vexari crossed one. We made sure no one would make that mistake again. In a small park on Earth, beneath a sky filled with stars, stands another memorial. It shows a young girl with violet eyes and a curious smile, her hand reaching upward as if to touch the cosmos. The plaque reads simply, Lena Chen, 2187 to 2196. She loved the stars. In her name, we protect them all. And across the galaxy, species who had once viewed humans as amusing curiosities now looked to the stars with new understanding. They had learned what we had always known, that the gentlest hearts, when broken, can unleash the most terrible storms. They had learned that humanity would not always be kind, would not always be reasonable, would not always seek peace at any cost. They had learned that we would go to war for a single child, and they would remember.